Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. All right, my friends, and welcome to a little recommendation video. But first, I have a little bit of a rant, sort of a little bit of a discussion, because the headline, the caption, the title, this isn't a clickbait. This is the truth. This is something that I go through phases of, but it's a phase that I've been stuck on for a bit of a hot minute. And it's something that comes up a lot when I talk about books lately. And it is, kind of the pacing of where Steam enters the chat. Now, the only reason I'm saying Steam instead of the actual word is because we're really early into the video and I just gotta be careful with when I say things, right? Because YouTube has been dinging some of my videos lately. And it's tough out there for those of us who make videos that are not appropriate for children, all right? So I gotta be careful when I say certain words. But by slow burn, I also am not just talking about the intimate part. I am talking about when the romance hits in the story. But often in romance, those things go hand in hand because we often jump right into the steam when we jump into the romance, right? That's how it goes. They go hand in hand. And it's not like I have a problem with that, okay? I don't. But it can get tiring sometimes when the pacing feels off, or when particularly the inner dialogue of certain characters jumps right to wanting to be humping and pumping, as I say often. And that can just get kind of exhausting, especially if it's going to be a slow burn romance, but the whole time they're having horny as hell thoughts. It can often make you feel exhausted about the steam before we've even gotten to it, I find. And it's kind of that thing of like, I feel like sometimes authors who are going to write a slow burn don't trust their audience. And so they start inserting things like sexy dreams or sexy scenarios in the characters' minds, or them thinking lustfully about the person super early on in the story to keep you on the hook. When that's not necessary, there are other ways you can build the tension without having to use the graphic language right away. And I know I already feel like my own hackles rising at myself because I'm not trying to be a prude, though there's nothing wrong with it if you are, though I don't know why you'd be watching my channel if you are, because I feel like I've scared those people away a long time ago. But I'm just saying, there's this thing called balance, right? And I just find that it's not that you can't have your characters be totally into each other. Of course, I want them to be completely into each other, both physically, mentally, emotionally. Like, I want them to have the whole package for one another. But there are other ways to express that than having him have his dick twitch, or having her get wet, or having those other things come about, right? So anyway, now I'm not saying the books I'm going to talk about today all follow this rule exactly perfectly, right? Because each author has their own style for how they do it. But I had this request from Hannah in my viewer video form request, my viewer video request form. And they wanted slow burns, but with high heat. And I'm not saying all of these have super high heat, because also if you've waited a while to introduce sex into the story, it can then feel really excessive if all they do is bang for the rest of that story. So I've found that sometimes I don't like when that happens either. I just had that happen in a book I finished the other day where I was like, we had this beautiful slow buildup, but then it was like the author felt like they needed to still earn like a 4 chili pepper, and so every single chapter of the characters together was them fucking from that point on. And I was like, no, we didn't have to do that either. So I don't know. And even as I say all this, I realize that an author almost can't win, even in this scenario I've just built for myself, right? And this is where your own preference comes in. How each author writes the story will absolutely make the difference for you, and for me it makes the difference about how believable they make it for you, and if you're buying into that particular relationship for those characters. Because if you are going to feel that it feels natural and that it's working for you, however that plays out, right? And that's really what I'm talking about with a slow burn, because I'm not saying that these are all exactly going to hit at the, generally for me, a slow burn is going to mean for the, 70 to 80% mark is where the characters are finally realizing their feelings and expressing them physically. That's not going to be 100% with all of these ones I'm talking about. I didn't go check. I didn't pull up the ebook and clock when's the first time they kiss or any of that. It's all about vibes in that respect, right? But to me, all these ones I'm going to talk about are ones where there was significant challenges to the relationship at the start, and so it led to a slow burn that, in my opinion, made each of these pretty impactful for me. And you're going to see that because, in general, except for I think 2 of these, and even those 2, I still enjoyed them quite a bit. But a lot of these ones are actually 5 or 6 star reads for me because of the slow burn and how we pushed it off. I was very invested in the relationships by the time the sex entered into it. So I had a great deal of buy-in for the couple. And then that just made everything feel so good about the story. It really did. So I'm going to go through these with you. And I'm going to try not to dive too deep into these. We'll try to make this a decently lengthed rec video, but you guys know how I go when I make that promise, and then we're here for an hour. But we'll see. I'm going to try to keep it quicker for some of these at least. But first up, I want to start with a bit of an older one for me, because I think this one is an example of the story necessitates it being a slow burn, but this is actually the first in a trilogy. The whole trilogy's out. Like I said, this is an older story. So I guess if you would line up the 3 books, this one technically, their whole story wouldn't be a slow burn. But in this first book itself, it's a slow burn. And you'll see what I mean now when I show you Ensnared by Tiffany Roberts. This is a writing duo, a husband and wife. And yes, this is a lovely edition that I got from, who was this one from? This one was Fake Rate. Still some of my favorite special editions, just absolutely beautiful. The inside is like this, but anyway, we're not doing show and tell for that. But this one is a slow burn because it's a monster romance, and there are quite a few monster romances that need the story to be a slow burn, because this man is, or this male, as they have you know, is spider appearing. He is arachnid looking. And though he will act quite offended when he is called a Spider-Man at points in the story, because he's actually called a Vrix in this world, he looks like a spider to his mate, Ivy. And that, of course, is going to be a very significant barrier to there ever being anything physical between them. And that makes sense, because this woman, who her crew crash landed on this alien planet where one of the main inhabitants is these spider-like aliens who are some of the intelligent life on this planet, and she ends up being rescued by him and taken back to his nest. where he is actually living kind of alone away from his people because of reasons for the story, which again, not going to get into everything, going to stay on track. And he actually almost sees her as like a pet that he's rescued because he doesn't know what humans are. He doesn't know what she is. He just thinks she is this soft, weak little creature that he's rescued. So there are no sexual feelings that are happening at all because again, he almost thinks she's an animal that he's rescued, right? And when she awakens, she thinks he is a beast and an animal. And it takes quite a while of him caring for her, of them, starting to try to cross a language barrier, starting to try to learn each other's language, where as they spend time together, a mating bond forms. And then with that mating bond, a sexual attraction forms. And finally, that barrier gets crossed eventually. And this is a book that I actually highlight as one of my absolute it is like my very favorite alien romance because I think that Tiffany and Robert do such a great job of building you up to that point. Even still, I've read this book 3 or 4 times now. The audiobooks are wonderful as well. I've read this 3 or 4 times now. And each time, even though I love Catan and Ivy so much, I'm always like, how do they get to the point where I, as Ivy, a human woman, would be okay with this Spider-Man sticking his very large, specialized dick in me? Okay, like, TMI, but for real, you're like, how do you have buy-in for this situation happening at all, right? But the way that they write it, a lot of it has to do with just how gentle Catan is and how caretaking and sweet he is. And then also because there's a mating bond. And so that does, of course, heighten like arousal and all these things. But anyway, I'm going to move on from this one. But this is one that, again, it is very much a slow burn in Ensnared. Is it so? If you line up all 3 books, there is Ensnared. Wow, I just forgot. Ensnared in... I know the last one is Bound. Why can't I remember all 3? Here we go. Ensnared, Enthralled, and Bound. If you lined up all 3 of them together, the story is not a slow burn in that respect, but I would say it is for Ensnared. Okay, next I want to mention one that I actually just read, and this one I did do quite a long discussion on my last weekly wrap-up. In fact, it is like one that I've done a post about on my Instagram and one that I made my like cover post because I found it to be quite moving. So again, I really won't talk about it too much, but this was a slow burn. That it's a slow burn because it is considered a taboo or a, forbidden romance because it is stepbrothers. And it is called Hollow by M.L. Burns. This was a new to me author. This was one I read because I annotated it for a pre-order. I probably wouldn't have picked this up for any other reason, just because I straight up hadn't heard of it at all. But this was one that it is called a dark romance, but the romance between Kyo and Aiden, I wouldn't consider dark. It's just very emotional. They've lost their parents at the beginning of the story. I believe it is Kyo's mother and Aiden's dad. And they've been stepbrothers since they were teenagers, but they actually met before they knew their parents were getting married. And so there were already kind of some feelings between the two of them. And then they basically have to put a halt to that because now they're going to be stepbrothers. Now, Kyo is a couple years older and he ends up like going away to college. But they stay, kind of close through, I don't want to spoil the whole thing, but like they stay in contact basically through like messages and, texting and things like that. And then when Aiden and his twin sister are graduating, Kyo is home, to celebrate them graduating. And there is a romantic moment between the two of them that gets shattered and it causes some distance between the two of them. And then Aiden actually meets someone. And that person ends up being a very abusive, controlling partner. that then leads Keo and Aiden not to speak for many years. But it makes Keo think, because he doesn't know this about this partner, it makes Keo think that the reason they never talked was because that advance was not wanted, that he overstepped, that he, made things awkward, that he ruined things. But now that it's been many years, they've lost their parents, and they end up both staying at a cabin that was left to them by their parents. They're going to have to now kind of work through what separated them. For Aiden, this is actually, or I think I'm saying it wrong. I think it's Auden and not Aiden, so I apologize there. It's one of those where everything's spelt just a little bit off, right? It's actually an opportunity for him to get away from his abuser, but Keo, he's holding a lot of pain for other reasons. So anyway, this one's a slow burn because of miscommunication, because of abuse, because of pain, because of mental health. And so there's a lot that has to be untangled before they can come together. So it does involve kink. It does involve some pretty sexy moments. But I wouldn't say that their actual relationship, once their romantic, is dark. I would call this kind of a suspensefully dark romance because of Auden's ex, who is an abusive asshole. He makes things kind of difficult for the two of them. But I really, really enjoyed this one, and I thought it was a really well done slow burn. Actually, a good use of flashbacks as well. I'm not always a huge fan of flashbacks, but I think they're pretty important to kind of fill in the mystery of how these two stopped talking and how someone got in between them, and also how Auden was being controlled by his abusive partner. So really, really like that one. Okay. Next up, an author who I think does slow burn really, really well. And one of her books that actually wasn't the very longest that she can do. She has some that are even slower burns than this one. But I think this one is a slow burn as well because it's well, I wouldn't say it's a second chance. So I think some people have it listed as that. I think it's more of a like thwarted chance together. And that is King of Gluttony by Anna Wong. Now, I do want to preface this by, I was unaware of the fact that the Indian representation in here isn't so good. Because that's obviously not my culture. I don't know what I don't know, but I have since seen some of the reviews of people that there's maybe been some cultural misrepresentation or appropriation in here. So just be aware of that. I, again, was not aware of that when I was reading it. So I really enjoyed this book, but that might very much annoy you if it is your culture. So just be aware of that and check out the reviews beforehand. But this book is Maya and Sebastian, and their families are actually friends, but they're kind of rivals within their families, and they end up that they are forced to kind of work together for the good of their families. And as I said, this one was kind of a thwarted romance back when they were both in, I think, college or boarding school, whichever one it is. And something happened that prevented them from ever really getting a chance to be together, which is pretty sad, actually. But it was actually probably good because they weren't really ready to be who the other one needed at that point either. But now they're both very successful. Their families are both in the food business, just in different ways, and they're collabing together for a business venture. And now they're forced to work together in these different ways. There also is Maya's family has is kind of pushing her to get married within a certain amount of time. And if she can't find someone to marry, she's going to be set up in an arranged marriage. So there's also the added pressure of that. And so when Sebastian finally let some of his feelings for her be known, there's now this pressure of like, ooh, something might finally be happening with Sebastian and I don't want to rush it. But also, if we don't rush it a little bit, now I might be forced to marry someone else who's not him. So there's a complex feeling in there. So this book has a lot of pining. It has a misunderstanding that is kind of forced on them by someone else, I will say. I just thought it was really well done. I love how Anna Huang does a slow burn. I love how she does pining. And really, pretty much any book in the series, I think you could do a slow, pretty much any book in this series or her sports series, I think has slow burn in it. But this was the most recent one, so that was the one I wanted to share here for you. Okay, another one is one of my 6-star reads from this year, which is The Countess Conspiracy by Courtney Milan. This one is a Friends to Lovers, and it absolutely wrecked me. I mean, that's why it is a 6-star read. Like I said, a lot of these are favorites of mine. And this one is about Violet Waterfield, who is the widowed Countess of Cambury. And she is actually has a scientific mind, and she's made a lot of discoveries and written a lot of papers. But because she is a woman, she can't actually share her scientific discoveries in any way that will matter. And so she has a friend named Sebastian Mahler, who is, I believe he's a second son and not really seen as anything important or special. And he has actually been presenting his scientific theories, which are actually Violet's. And they've been working together to do this. It's not like he's been stealing her work or any of that. Like, she's been providing the work and he's been presenting it. But at the beginning of this book, he's actually reached the point where he's really feeling like a fraud about all of this. And he just hates seeing Violet's work be represented as his. Like, he actually is tired of it. And so he lets her know in the beginning of this book that he wants to dissolve this conspiracy that they've been working on. And at the same time, pretty much, he also lets her know that he's been in love with her for years. And now that her husband has been gone for a while, he really wants her. Now, for Violet, she just like can't believe this. She has a lot of self-image issues, self-worth issues. She thinks that this is a passing fancy for him. She truly doesn't understand how deeply this man is absolutely head over heels for her. She thinks it might just be a physical thing. And she is like, buddy, this can't happen. I'm broken. I'm scraps and parts. There's nothing to desire about me. And Sebastian just goes about proving over and over and over again how absolutely wrong she is to think that about herself. But it does take quite a lot of time and patience on his part. But also, he sticks up for himself quite a bit too in saying, nope, you don't get to discount my feelings. Nope, it's okay if you don't return them. That's not going to stop me from being your friend. That doesn't change how I feel about you. But you don't actually get to say that I don't know what I'm talking about. And you don't actually get to say that I don't deeply love and care about you. And no, I don't want meaningless sex with you, because there is a point in the book where she offers, well, we could just sleep together. Like, I think you're good looking and we could just have sex if that's what you want. And Sebastian's like, no, you're misunderstanding me. If I just wanted to have sex with someone, I would. I don't want that. I love you. I want you to be mine. And if you don't want that, I'm not pushing that on you. Like, I love this man, you guys, okay? It's why it's one of my favorite books this year. It's a literal perfection, because every preconceived notion she has about what sex, love, a relationship might look like, she has had to like barter for or been told there are expectations to it. And Sebastian is just like, no, he's just laid it all out there and said, I love you, I want you. And there are no like rules to that except I want you to love me back. And if you don't love me back, I'm still going to be your friend. There's no contingency. You haven't lost me if you don't love me back. He's like, also, I didn't expect you to love me back. I just couldn't hide it anymore. And I'm tired of having to hide it. So I'm telling you that I love you, but you don't owe me anything. And me loving you isn't contingent upon you giving me your body or giving me your heart. Like, I just wanted to tell you. And it's so good. We're not going to cry during this review or this, recommendation video, but I love this. And it is a very slow burn, mostly because Violet is very hurt and very damaged by not just her previous marriage, which is hard to explain because it's not as simple as like an abusive situation. Like her husband wasn't beating her. He wasn't like punishing her in anything so easy to explain. It's very complicated. But it does take a lot of convincing and consistent and devoted love on Sebastian's side to prove how he feels for her. And it's beautiful. So just fantastic. You must read it. It's so good. So good. It's fantastic. Okay, now a bit of a lighter one after that, because that one is quite gut-wrenching and beautiful. There is The Wild Card, which is a part of the Vancouver Storm series by Stephanie Archer. And this one is fun, a little more tropey than some of these other ones I've been mentioning. This one is a kind of an office romance situation. We have Tate Ward, who is a former star hockey player who is now a coach for the Vancouver Storm, and he is a single dad. And then there is Jordan, who is a staff member for the Vancouver Storm, and she is also works at a bar in town. But I believe it's her father, and he is the owner of the team, and he threatens to sell the team unless she works with Coach Ward to get the team the wild card spot for the playoffs. And so her and Tate have to work together to do that. Then I can't remember the exact reason. Sorry, I'm looking at the page for this. It's been a hot minute since I read this one. She ends up, I think ends up being something wrong with her apartment or her house or something. So she ends up moving into Tate's guest house. So everything gets super complicated. He also is a single dad. So there's just a lot of them being forced close together as well. But I love this. I love the found family. I love how she is with his daughter. I love the caretaking that takes place in this one. And yeah, it's a slow burn between them. And also she just has a really complicated relationship with her father. And so him forcing her to work with Tate on getting them the wild card spot is really manipulative on her father's part, because she doesn't fully want anything to do with the managing part of the team. But so many of the players are her friends at this point for her managing the bar. And the players' women, you know, which this is the 5th book in the series. And like so many of the players' partners are her friends. And if the team loses, those people could get traded, things could happen. And so a lot of people's careers and livelihoods are like on the line. So it was really manipulative of her dad for that. But really like this one. It's really sweet. I think most of the books in this series from Stephanie Archer, though they aren't all slow burns, I feel like she does a really good job in the building the romance, and the like softness is very beautiful between everybody in it. So I recommend pretty much any of them in this series for that regards as well. Okay, then we have another queen of slow burn, though a lot of it is for how how thick the books are. Okay, so this one we have another nanny one here. We have Love Unwritten. This is one that I really, really love. Here's a beautiful page overlay of this one. This one we have Raphael and Ellie. And this one, we have Raphael, who needs a nanny. And I remember, if I remember right, it's been 2 years since I've read this one, so it's a bit of a slow burn here, but, or in my mind here. But these two are really grumpy with each other. And she's hired to be his nanny and teach music to his son. And he really, like, resists her because he's very attracted to her. And he's very resistant against that. But his son absolutely adores her. And so he does kind of misjudge her and think the wrong things about her to start with. And I believe there's at one point where he kind of has to, like, crawl back to her because Nico loves her so much, his son. And so he has to kind of beg her to come back. And then there ends up being a vacation that she goes on with as well to nanny with for. But then she is writing music as well. And then she actually gets an opportunity to live her dreams. And now he kind of has to be the patient one and wait while she gets the opportunity to write songs and do some things there. So I really like how much time this book covered. I love how there is them both supporting each other through some of these opportunities that they get. But through all of it, it's them loving Nico and how kind of Nico brings them closer together and makes them be more patient with one another than they would normally be for the love of this young boy. And I just really love that type of attitude that people have. So really, really love this one. And I wonder when Lauren Asher has a book coming soon. I think I've seen it be shared what's coming next. But it's been a hot minute, I think, since one's come out. But this was a really good one from her. Okay, then one that I talk about a lot as well, so I'll be brief on this one. Sweet Prison by Neva Altaj. This is another one that is step siblings. And so I think step siblings, when they're done right, really do involve a slow burn. Excuse me. Because to make them believable, I think you need to give them time to make it happen. And this is the one where he is much older than her. He's actually near the same age as her older brother. And her older brother, when the heroine, Zahara, is just a little girl, her older brother gets murdered. And Massimo kills a man who murdered her older brother. And Massimo ends up getting put in prison for that. And it was kind of a, they thought they had the judge bought off, and they don't. And so he ends up going to jail and kind of having to run the family from prison. So she's growing up with her sister and her father, and Massimo's in jail. And eventually, when she is a teenager, she actually starts writing letters to Massimo. And eventually he starts writing letters back, and they actually come up with their own code, writing letters back and forth. And he ends up using her for information. And it isn't until actually she is, I think, 18 or 19 and her father dies. And Massimo is brought to the funeral, and he sees her in person for the first time. And he realizes who he's writing letters to now. That his stepsister is the most beautiful woman he's ever seen. And he's like, holy shit, I need to stop interacting with this woman. But it's far too late for that, because she is his best resource, who's the only one who's truly telling him the truth about everything. And he needs her. And also, he's now obsessed with her. So he tries to tell himself differently, but the man is very, very gone for his stepsister, though. He tries to lie to himself. And so it's a couple more years before he then gets out of prison. And now, you know, again, even though legally, like, they're not related at all. He may be much older than her, but he didn't raise her. He wasn't around her growing up. There's nothing, like, bad about that. They are still from a very traditional family. It's going to look bad to the leadership. And also, he's half crazy. Like, literally, he has a voice in his head that is almost a bipolar type of situation because of how much time he spent in solitary and just how crazy his mind has been after being in prison for so much. But anyway, this is a really beautiful slow burn between the two of them. And what is cool about it, also, I should mention this, is him writing all these letters to her and all of the tasks he has her do through the years. It really gives Zahara a lot of confidence and has made her quite a strong woman in a way that she probably wouldn't have been otherwise. So he made this quite fierce, powerful woman up who has been helping him all this time. And now he can't just shove her back in a box and make her this meek, biddable girl now. And so he kind of has to deal with this fierce chica he's created, and she wants her man. She's in love with him and she wants her man, and she's not just going to let him push her aside. So yes, very slow burn for these two, but once it's cooking, Zahara is not going to let him just push her aside because he doesn't want to either. No matter what lies he tries to tell himself, the devil in his head isn't going to let him get away with it either, which is wonderful. Okay, then we have one that I actually read for my Patreon last year, which was Revive Me by Nikki Castle. And this one was a slow burn kind of for a practical sense as well, because we had Roman, who was a professional MMA fighter who ended up with an injury to his spinal cord. So it, of course, alters the trajectory of his life. And so he ends up coming to a physical therapy clinic where he meets Liliana, who ends up being one of the only physical therapists who's able to get through to him. He's been very dejected, very much pushing against help from anyone, doesn't believe he can get better, and she's actually one of the few who's able to help him. But because of the actual, injury that he has, this, has slow burn for that reason. Also because of the type of relationship that they have, it would be inappropriate for there to be anything romantic happening. So their relationship is, kind of pushed off for a bit as well. So I like how it plays out. Of course, some of the professional lines do get crossed and there are consequences to those. But in the end, it's all about helping Roman get better and to heal. And I really love how that played out in this one. So yes, my full review for this one is on my Patreon. If anyone would like to check it out there, you can check it out. But I did find this one really fascinating, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. I read it over Thanksgiving, which was really fun. Okay, and then the last one I wanted to share today is one of my faves. And this one I think might be kind of right on the line of if it's a slow burn or not. Maybe things start to come in earlier than you might expect them to. I don't know. But I find it to be a slow burn in that I think our hero just takes his time and is very diligent about everything that he does. So this is P.S. You're Intolerable by Julia Wolf. And this is a Not His Baby. This is a boss and assistant. And this is absolutely lovely. This is, wow, I just forgot her first name. And it's Kit. Yeah, it's Kit. Catherine and Elliot. and she's actually pregnant when she starts working for Elliot. But when she has the baby, Elliot realizes how absolutely vital she is to him. And when he ends up going to visit her at her home after she's had her baby, he realizes she's been left in a pretty awful state by the father of her baby, who basically abandoned her when he found out she was pregnant. But they were also remodeling the house they were living in because they were going to flip this house together. He was supposedly her friend, and they had hooked up, even though they weren't like romantically involved. They'd hooked up, and then he abandoned her, which is awful. And now she's kind of screwed. Like I said, she's been left in this state with no help, no nothing. And Elliot just can't bear to see her that way. So he ends up actually moving her into his home and helping take care of her and the baby. And he makes all of these just quiet changes and things to help her until the point where it's so obvious that all these changes he's made are to make her life easier and to show his like patient devotion and love for her. And he also becomes absolutely obsessed with her daughter, Joey, and just loving and supporting her all about. It's wonderful. So love it. So yeah, this one maybe not as slow burn as some of the others, but then again, I think when you read it, I feel like it's a slow burn in some other ways, just because of how it's such a slow awakening to Kit, how deeply Elliot cares and all these things he's done, even when he seems like he's being a grump and seems like he's being an asshole, you know, he's being intolerable, and really he is just being so supportive and making all these changes for her. And so once her eyes are opened, it's like, oh my God, what's happening? When really they were all these slow little changes he'd been making for her. He just wasn't trumpeting out about them that he was doing it. So I love that about him so much. So he's my favorite. So yeah. But anyway, there you go. Those are some slow burn romance recs I have for you. And those are some things that I wish we did more in romance, though I think they're there if we look for them. You know, I think a lot of times one thing I always like to remind us is we always will find something to bitch about. That is what gets clicks. That is what gets attention. We like to complain. Whatever it is we like to find in books, we can find it. That's why videos like this exist. That is why creators like me exist, book recommenders like me exist. You just have to be willing to go and search for it. So if this video resonated with you, if you would please share it with a friend who also loves slow burn. If you have some slow burn recs, please leave them down below. Thank you again so much to Hannah for this video idea, which again was that maybe it's a slower burn, but there still actually is open door in it. Of course, it's a whole other thing if there is like slow burn and no steam at all. Like those are totally different things, right? And I do have some videos to that effect as well. So yeah, if you also have a suggestion for a video idea, please feel free to leave that in the form down below. I go through that all the time. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, friends. I'll see you next time.